Hi, I'm Katelyn, and this is Algorithm Empowerment, and I'm here to talk to you today about the life-changing magic of tidying up by Marie Kondo. So she begins with talking about how keeping tidy is not impossible, and even a complete slob can be tidy, and that she has a no rebound rate. So 0% of her students come back to her, and that's because her process of tidying really works. And I am a living and breathing example of that. So she goes into the fact that you have to do this in one go. So this process can't be like, I have 2 hours tomorrow, I'll do it then. It has to be that you schedule a day where you just tidy your entire house. Marie Kondo started at a young age. So when she was about 5 years old, she would always just read her mom's magazines and she would read all of these articles about tidying. And she used a million different methods just from all of these magazines that she used. And she found the best process and something that actually works. And she talks about how the problem in rebound is that if you throw out, say, one item a day, and then you just keep adding more, or you clean one room this day and then another room the next day. But the problem is that you have the same things in those rooms, so you're just repeating the same process day in and day out. So she really goes into this problem and how this is the best way to address that. So she goes into why you can't keep your house in order. And number one, you have never learned why. So in school, you really never learned how to tidy your house. And your parents probably never said, okay, so this is how you tidy, or how you clean things, or how you put your house in order. You just kind of like learned from watching your parents. And so she is here to teach you that this is how you tidy your house. And she also says that you really just need to change your way of thinking, and that a clean space is a clean mind, and that you really need to understand why you're cleaning or why you're tidying. And I mean, she goes into details about how folding can be therapeutic if you think of it that way, and how this whole process can be really just restoring and relaxing as long as you understand what you're doing it for. And she goes into the fact that you should never clean half-heartedly, and that you should do everything. And that's why you need to do it in one go, because you need to do it with everything in you. I mean, you really just need to get rid of everything and find everything's home, put a place for all of your everything that you have. And she really goes into the fact that tidying is a mindset. And she also goes into the fact that storage experts are hoarders, because all they do is find these intricate ways to hold on to more things. And the last thing that you need is more of a clutter problem than you already have. She goes into the fact that you need to sort by category and not by room. So you need to, like, for instance, you need to take all of your clothes, every single item of clothing you have in your house, and bring it into one place. So that's really important, because there's clothes in every part of your house. So if you bring all of those clothes into one place and get rid of them, then you're knocking out an entire category, and then you don't have to do that process over and over again in each room. She says that effective tidying involves only two essential actions: discarding and deciding where to store things. But discarding must come first. She also goes into the fact that after you've discarded, it's so important to visualize what you want. So when I was doing my tidying, I visualized a floor that was just so clean, that was so barren. And I visualized myself waking up in the morning and not looking at the floor and thinking, oh, I have to clean my room today. I really just imagined myself being so at peace in my own space. And I think that that's what was so important to me about this, and how I saw so much value in this, is that I could come home and have one less thing to worry about. And that's a huge benefit. When you're discarding, this part, I think, to me, is just the most fun to ask myself. And what you need to do is ask yourself, every item you pick up, does this spark joy? And if it doesn't, get rid of it. And if you question if it brings you joy, get rid of it. Just if it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. And so you should always think in terms of category and not place when you're doing this. And so what needs to come first is clothes, and then books, and then papers, and kimono, which means miscellaneous, and mementos. And you should not start with the most difficult. So whatever you do, don't start with mementos. And then what's really important too is that you shouldn't let your family see this. It's kind of like a natural instinct to worry about your child if they're throwing out a bunch of things. So just like try not to let them see it. And then if you usually give your stuff that you're giving away to someone else, if you ask them if they want it, you should always ask them if they would buy it. Because if they wouldn't buy it, then they will never use it. Don't give the burden to someone else. And then really, this was what I saw the most value in, is that I had this jacket that was just expensive and I never really used it, but I wanted to hold on to it because I paid so much money for it. But what she said is that you need to realize that the moment of purchasing that, of taking that home in the bag and taking it out and feeling the feeling that you get when you've just bought something new and it's exciting, and that is the only joy that item will ever bring you. So even though I never wore it, it doesn't belittle the fact that that jacket gave me so much joy when I was purchasing it. And so it has now surpassed the point to which it'll bring me joy. And so it's okay to get rid of something, even if it was expensive and you've never used it, because you'll never use it again and it's just going to take up more space in your house. She also talks about how you should really be rid of clothing that you would recycle. So clothing that, let's say you have a shirt that has a hole in it, you shouldn't use it as loungewear unless you really do love it, and then it sparks joy when you think of it as loungewear. You shouldn't just recycle it for loungewear because you're probably never actually going to use it. She goes into folding, which I found such just a beautiful process, because I really dreaded folding until she told me about how you can kind of look at it as a therapeutic process. There's a specific type of folding called yukata folding, and it's where you fold a piece of clothing where it stands up on its edge so that you can see everything in your drawer, and so that when you open your drawer, things aren't stacked on top of one another, they're laying beside each other. And so you can see everything that's in your drawer just by opening it. She also goes into the fact that you should never ball up your socks. I mean, your socks take such a brutal beating. They get you from place to place, and you should really express gratitude towards them because they love you. And so you should love them back. So she says that you should, instead of balling them up, you should fold them just once and place them in your drawer. Because when you place them in your drawer, that drawer, the time that they're in there, that's their vacation. And they should be able to stretch out and breathe a little bit. Then she goes into books, and that if you have never read a book that's on your shelf, you should toss it. Because chances are you're never going to read it. When you're going through your books, it's so important not to read the books, because then it just makes the process of asking yourself if it brings joy, it kind of makes that fuzzy. So when you touch the book, you should instantly know, does this book bring me joy? And if it doesn't, get rid of it. Because oftentimes books become invisible. They just kind of become another piece in your room. And so it's so important to really assess books and just make sure that they bring you joy if you're going to keep them. Another thing is papers. So she suggests that you discard all of your papers. And then there are 3 reasons that you should discard your papers, and it's if they're currently in use, needed for a limited time, or you must keep indefinitely. So things such as your passport, your birth certificate, things that you should really not get rid of, don't get rid of them. So don't discard literally everything, but discard most things, such as like lecture materials, credit card statements, warranties, greeting cards, used checkbooks, pay slips, so things like that you really don't need to keep. And she goes into the miscellaneous drawer, which I had a very nice and large miscellaneous drawer where I just threw things in, but I didn't know if I would keep them or not. But she says that you should bid farewell to this just because approach. And I was holding on to this Big Ben keychain and money from different countries and things that I just kind of thought they were cool. But they didn't bring me joy, so I just needed to get rid of them. And I had been holding on to them just because. So we need to get rid of that just because approach and really only keep things that bring you joy. And a lot of people that hold on to this just because approach, they keep their electronic packages, broken appliances, buttons, bedding for the guest who never comes, and free stuff. I always keep free stuff, but it never brings me joy. So just get rid of it. All of the change that you find in this process should go into your wallet. And if you don't want to keep this change, I mean, I had a million pennies. So what I did with those pennies is I put them into a bag, and the homeless person that I see every day, I just gave them to him because he would find more joy in a million pennies than I did. Now, she also goes through sentimental items, and by handling each sentimental item, you process your past, and you just kind of like move through it. And that she also talks about photos, and that you should only hold on to photos that really truly spark joy. So the shoes that you were wearing one day on your vacation probably don't spark joy, so you should get rid of the photo of them. Um, and she really talks about how you should reduce until you reach a point where something clicks. And this is so important because I reached that process, and I really like realized I had reached that process. So it was very clear to me that like at one point I just was so content with how much I had. And after I had finished discarding and I was putting everything in order and I was finding a home for each thing in my room, I realized that everything had a home, which was just such a beautiful thing because nothing is on my floors anymore. She recommends that you move things into your closet, and that you put anything that's taking up floor space should go into your closet if you have enough room, and that everything has a designated spot. She also goes into the fact that you don't need extravagant storage compartments. You don't need any sort of extravagant storage unit, and that all you need for storage is a shoebox. A shoebox can be used for so many things. She talks about how you can use the lid to store your oils in your kitchen, or you can use the actual shoebox to organize just anything within your drawers. She also talks about how you need to forget about floor plan and frequency of use. And so if you have soy sauce or a salt shaker, or if you have, I don't know, olive oil in your bedroom and your living room and your kitchen, it all needs to go into one place, and you need to discard just the excess because you don't need to stock up on a million things. Once it runs out, just get something else. Marie Kondo talks about how the magic of tidying dramatically transforms your life, and that her friend who was working at an IT company after she took Marie Kondo's course, she actually became a teacher because she realized just from like going through her items that she really loved teaching and that she had a ton of books on it. And so she realized that that was her passion within that process. And so it can honestly just dramatically change your life, and just for the better. She also goes into the fact that tidying is really just a detox, and that it's so detoxifying. She goes into the philosophy of feng shui, and that it's really about living in accordance with the real rules of nature. And her approach is exactly the same. So all she's doing is trying to make you live in accordance with the rules of nature. And lastly, it makes so much sense to surround yourself by things that spark joy and by things that really truly make you happy. So if you can do this, you can be at so much more peace in your life, and it could bring so much happiness into your life and just contentment. And so I really hope that you can benefit from the key points that I've talked about here. And we really do believe at Algorithm Empowerment that you should really just keep giving her.